Hey everybody, how you doing? Today I want to do something a little bit crazy, and I want to talk about politics because everybody knows the politics plus the internet, perfect combination. Nothing can go wrong there. 2 days ago, Meryl Streep got a lot of attention for her speech at the Golden Globes, in which she said some things about President-elect Trump, and she's got a lot of press for that, a lot of attention, and that kind of kicked off in my brain some things that I've had that's been floating in there that I've wanted to get out, but I haven't done it for one reason or another. So I thought today I'd say a few things that I think about. Two things really. One is my theory on why Donald Trump won the election. And the second thing is something that we need to be very careful about going forward once he officially is, the president, not just the president-elect. So here's my theory. When you look at the map of how the votes kind of laid out and what states went which color and everything else, it's fascinating because you start on the West Coast and it's all blue. And then you get some red-blue mix up until you get to Colorado and New Mexico, which are all blue. And then it tears across the country and almost all red. Like my brother, I remember the night of November 8th said, it's amazing how you can have that much of the country be all that color and still have the other person get more votes. But it's because of that I think this is a really fascinating idea, because what you see most of the time is that the more heavily populated areas tend to vote toward blue, and the less densely populated areas tend to vote toward red. It's not universal, but it's a pretty decent metric, I think. So, what's my theory? The more densely populated an area is, the more likely they are to interact with people that are different than themselves. When I grew up in western Colorado, I didn't go to school with an African American kid until I was in the 7th grade. And then I had one kid in the entire school, and that was it. I had no exposure at all to that demographic. Went to high school, didn't get a whole lot better. I mean, it was a small high school, only 200 kids, but out of those 200 kids, I only had 4 other students who were African American. So what that did for me is, in my brain, those 4 or 5 people, they were the model I had for African Americans in this country. That's it. I didn't have anything else to go off of. It was that, and it was anything that I would have seen in a TV show or a movie. I'd say a video game, but at that time there were basically no black characters in video games. And really barely any in TV and movies when we really got down to it, aside from your occasional token character. The point is, when I grew up, I didn't know what other people would have thought. I didn't know the challenges of other people. I didn't ever stop to think about what life might be like for other people because I didn't encounter other people. My upbringing was very, very white. And that's fine, and it's great, and it's something that I've had to go through a lot of mental gymnastics to kind of work through. The awareness of privilege and the awareness of power, the awareness of all of that stuff. But the only reason I was able to take those steps is because eventually I did end up in an area with great diversity. When I first started teaching, my school, though still majority white, had students from all over the place. We had students from Vietnam and Sudan, as well as all through Central America. We had tons and tons of different students. And it wasn't really until then that I could start understanding the spectrum and the scope of life. And that's kind of what changed me overall in how I saw the world and how I think people ought to be treated and how we shouldn't just put a label on something and say that's the way it is. What's that have to do with any of this? Less densely populated areas generally lack diversity. If you look at that map and you see all the states, not all, but a lot of the states that went red, they are small town, rural, middle America, and Southern America. Areas that the diversity is minimal. So what does that mean? That my theory is when you have a group of people that is cut off from every other group of people, by choice or not by choice, their view on the world is conditioned because of that diversity. So what happens? Small town in rural America has been changing just like the rest of America. Not for the better in most cases. You know, there's a lot of information out there about how a lot of the small towns in rural America, they're being drained of their people. They'll send their kids off to college because they know they should go to college, and those kids never come back to those small towns because there's no opportunity in those small towns for them to do the stuff that they just got a degree for. And so they're withering up, they're drying up. Their way of life is changing too. They hear on TV from this one guy that most of those problems, the reason that there's, not a lot of jobs is because illegal immigrants have taken their jobs. They see horrific acts of violence being reported on the news, and they're fed the idea, not just that the people who did some of these acts were Muslim, because they were, you can't deny that part, they were Muslim, but they are fed this other thing that they are all dangerous. Every Muslim is dangerous, and they're fed the line that we can ban them, we can keep them out of the country. And then we can blame China for whatever you blame China for. So here's the deal. When you don't have anything else to gauge those pieces of information on, you may as well just take what you got, because it's what we do anyway. We can sit there and argue about whether media does or doesn't affect us. I think we'd be fooling ourselves if we said it didn't have any effect on us at all. But when we don't have a model of reality that we actually engage in, we don't have anything to combat that with. If you've never been friends with a Muslim ever, you don't have any reason really to think, yeah, maybe they're not all terrible. But if you have made friends with a Muslim, you realize that they are people. And they're interested in things that people are interested in. And they're concerned with the same things that other people are concerned with. But if you don't have that, you just go off of what, the guy with the hair says. And the same goes for everything else. Illegal immigrants. If you are not friends with somebody who has lived in any of the places that people illegally immigrate from, then you have a skewed perspective, you have a biased perspective, you have a one-sided perspective, probably fed to you from somebody on TV, or the radio, or YouTube, or whoever. And it's those really strong voices that tend to stick in your brain, and that's what you go off of. So you start spouting stuff off, and you start thinking about things, and you think they're your thoughts, but they're really thoughts from other people. And ultimately, I think that's kind of what happened with our election, is we had a guy who was able to call out a bunch of things wrong with America. And he blamed people that a good chunk of the country couldn't fact check. They couldn't. They didn't have a reason to disbelieve it. And I don't want to use the word ignorant because that's such a loaded term and it comes off as so terrible, but I'm going to use it, but not in a terrible way. I don't mean ignorance as in stupid and hateful, because that's not what that word means. They just don't know. Just like I don't know. There's tons of stuff I don't know. Tons. Everybody doesn't know stuff, but we have the voices in our heads that kind of direct us one way or the other, and we judge everybody else based on those voices that we've heard and held in there. So what got him into office? He could say things and he could say them loud. And a lot of the people who voted, not all, but a lot, didn't have anything to base it off of. They didn't have anything to go off of. He says it's that, let's do it. Let's build that wall. Because they're stealing our jobs. Which jobs is always the question. Very few people are actually having an answer for. So that's how I think it happened. I think that asks from all of us a really interesting question, which is to consider life of those people who voted that way, especially from small town rural America. They have been, in many cases, demonized and vilified as the racist white people that are also the problem. We need to be very careful with that. Very careful. Because it's not helping anything. But here's what I want to think of going forward. The second thing. Not too long ago, I saw somebody post something about something Donald Trump tweeted. And it fact-checked him and said what he's tweeting is not true. I don't remember what the exact thing was, but I think you can pick any tweet from any given day. And there's plenty of fact-checkers who are calling him out on it. So it doesn't really matter what it was. But whereas one person was saying, this is ridiculous. How is he going to be the president when he lies so frequently? And one of the first comments was, well, yeah, but Hillary's a dishonest, Hillary's a nasty woman, Hillary's blah. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at all, and here's why. The election's over. A lot of people were holding out that there might be the evidence of, tampered with voting machines and hoping for the Electoral College to change their vote and go the other direction. Neither of which are happening. This guy's going to be president. So, for people who voted and continue to support Donald Trump, here's what I want to ask of you. When he does something outrageous, can you please acknowledge it as outrageous without comparing him to a person who's not in the race anymore? Like, that made sense during the election season. When he said, that guy said terrible things. That guy bragged about sexual assault. That guy, and they're like, well, there is the other person on the other side, and we have to consider there's two people, and we're balancing them out. We're trying to weigh them and figure out who's the best. That made sense. Fine. You can then throw Clinton out there and say, this is why I didn't like her. But that's done, okay? A lot of people talk about how one side is being a sore loser. Anybody who still talks about Clinton as a justification for Trump's wretched behavior is a sore winner. And they can't seem to look him in the eye and say, this is the guy I wanted. So I'm asking you to be honest about it, because I think that's what some of us need. Some of us need to know that these United States can continue to be united when their leader does something ridiculous. We need to be somewhere that doesn't just say, that was inappropriate, offensive, unprofessional, and undignified. But at least he didn't murder a puppy on live television. Because that doesn't matter. What matters is this guy represents all of us, whether we like it or not. That guy represents the country, whether we like it or not. And because of that, I'm asking everyone to have open, honest conversations, which is like impossible to ask for, because all of us attach so much identity to our politics. We attach so much to the way we vote. And as silly as that is, when you break it down, there's no getting past it. It is what it is. So you need to create safe spaces for each other. You need to create a moment where people can listen to you. You need to be able to have a conversation where you can say what you think and not freak out when somebody says what they think back. If we don't open our brains, and if we don't open our hearts, that is so stupid. If we don't listen to people, and we stop treating people like people, then it doesn't really matter if Trump is president or not. It means that we are a terrible, terrible nation. So that's what I want going forward. That's what I want to look for. I've had to stay quiet at many a dinner room table. I've not done a lot of speaking on this because I know it's divisive and I know it's challenging and it's kind of, but Mike McHargue says that when you have people who think differently than you, you can't just expect somebody else to somehow reach out to them and change their mind. You can't hope that somebody that you completely 100% disagree with is going to flip around because later they're going to hear one of your media champions and just turn around. It won't work. You have to be the person that is kind enough and gracious enough, nice enough to actually give people their space to voice their concerns, their fears, their problems, their hopes. And if you listen to them, with any luck, they'll listen to you. And they don't have to flip and agree with you completely, but you should, I hope, be able to find something where you find common ground as people. That you can be civil and that you can be loving. That's what I'm hoping for this year. Do your best to make that happen, and we'll see you next time.